7 spine-chilling disappearances exposed, disturbing mysteries that remain terrifyingly unexplained. The rain poured in heavy sheets over Cedar Grove, and whispers hissed between neighbors. 7 children had vanished without a trace, snatched from their homes, and the shadows seemed to deepen with every passing day. The vibrant murals of summer had turned to dull grays, and a thick fog of fear draped over the tidy lawns and white picket fences. Emily Thompson, a single mother who had always felt the warmth of safety in this suburb, now felt chills crawl over her skin as she pulled into the driveway. Inside, the house should have been teeming with life, but tonight, it was just an echo of silence that awaited her. "Jake!" she called out, her voice trembling with anxiety. Normally, he'd be slumped on the couch, control in hand, fully engrossed in yet another game. But tonight was different. The silence swallowed her call, and her heart thundered as she dropped her bag, racing with panic into the living room. The cold emptiness gripped her. She could almost hear past residents in the neighborhood whispering about the abandoned schoolhouse, myths of lost souls wandering its halls. Sweat trickled down her back as the memories of those tragic stories returned. The neighbor's son, Jason, had been joining Jake more often lately. A charismatic boy with a grin that could charm anyone, but there was something unsettling about him too, a flicker in his eyes that didn't sit right with her. She quickly searched every room, each empty space filled her with dread. Just then, she caught sight of her phone lighting up in the dark, the last message from Jake lingering hauntingly. "Mom, I'm at Jason's. We'll be back soon." A wave of disbelief washed over her. The fear of losing Jake seized her like a vice. Just as she turned to grab her coat, she was struck by another layer of chill, the thought of Jason's family. Jason's father, with his ever-pleasant smile, was well-liked in the community, trusted by everyone. A deep breath trembled in her chest. What secrets lay behind that friendly facade? Before she could spiral any further, thunder crashed overhead. The power flickered, plunging her into a deep darkness that screeched panic through her veins. She couldn't wait. She had to search. Grabbing her keys, she shoved open the door, the wind howling around her like ghosts crying out in agony. The schoolhouse loomed at the end of the street, an unsettling silhouette against the bleak sky, where restless spirits from the tales of missing children were said to linger. Her heart pounded as she made her way towards it, each step weighted with dread. Familiar sounds seemed muffled, like the whole world had bowed to a shadow. The door creaked open, revealing a decaying interior that smelled of mold and despair. Shadows scurried along the walls as she stepped inside, her feet barely touching the floorboards, as if the place itself was alive. Just then, her fear morphed into adrenaline, sharpening her instincts. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she stepped further into the heart of the schoolhouse, a chilling realization struck her. The photographs hanging crookedly on the walls, happy faces of children frozen in time, followed her with their vacant stares. She recognized them, each child linked to a name she once knew. Were they just figments of nightmares, or had they truly vanished into the shadows just like Jake? Among them was Jason. The very thought sent chills racing down her spine. "Jake!" she shouted, but the silence crept around her like a predator. A distant echo called out, her son's voice, but it sounded different, distorted, as though coming from somewhere deep within the walls of the cursed building. She took a shaky step forward, dread coiling tightly around her heart. As she reached for the door that led deeper into the darkness, a sudden cold swept through her, almost alive, as if the air was saturated with impending doom. Who could she trust in this nightmare? With the storm raging outside, the door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. The list of missing children ran through her mind like a jarring mantra, and she felt the terrifying truth settle in her gut. Whatever happened next, she was stepping into a world of secrets darker than she'd ever imagined. The air inside the schoolhouse thickened with every step Emily took. Each understated creak of the wooden floorboards beneath her felt like a whisper of a warning, urging her to turn back, but she pressed on. She had to find Jake. The voices around her swelled and faded, a ghostly echo of laughter and shouts, intertwining with the howling wind outside, muffling any sense of security she'd ever known. As she stepped deeper into the darkness, her eyes adjusted to the dim light seeping through the cracked windows. The walls were lined with faded murals of bright landscapes, fields, forests, and children playing. Yet, they faded into an overbearing sense of decay, their vibrancy leached away, much like the closeness she'd once felt toward her own son. It felt wrong, like an omen. "Jake!" She called again, her voice trembling but stronger this time, desperation sharpening every syllable. She knew he had to be close, but the building seemed to stretch infinitely, its layout distorted as if mocking her. The unsettling feeling in her gut grew heavier, turning her legs to lead when she heard it again, the soft whisper of a child's laughter, echoing somewhere to her left. She hurried toward the sound, the air thickening as she entered a narrow hallway adorned with more photographs, their glass frames dulled by years of neglect. Each child wore a smile that seemed too innocent, too hopeful. The last time she'd seen her own son smile like that, it felt like an eternity ago. Then a flicker caught her eye, the figure of a boy darting around the corner at the end of the corridor. Panic surged through her. Was it Jake? Emily's heart raced as she chased after the shadow, but when she rounded the corner, the hallway yawned wide and empty. Everything around her felt ominously still. "Jake!" she screamed, the sound reverberating back to her like a frightened animal. She fumbled for her phone, praying for a signal, but only darkness met her as she raised it. The storm outside raged on, lightning illuminating fleeting glimpses of the crumbling walls punctuated by twisted vines, as if they were trying to reclaim the building from the world. With every bolt, it felt like the spirits of the lost children were reaching out, desperate for help. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the hall, causing Emily's heart to drop into her stomach. Somewhere deeper in the school, a door had slammed. The sound ricocheted off the walls, leaving her breathless. She hesitated, torn between fleeing through the exit she had come from or investigating. The instinct to protect her son pushed her forward. She had to know what lay beyond. Taking a deep breath, she moved toward the source of the sound. Each step was punctuated by a lingering fear that someone, or something, was watching her. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she glanced over her shoulder, expecting to see Jason lurking behind her. But the hall was still and ominous. As she approached the door that had slammed, a soft thud echoed, then silence. Throwing it open, she spotted an old classroom, the chalkboard cracked and covered in layers of dust. Papers lay scattered across the floor, some with familiar names, the very names of those children who had vanished. A chill crept down her spine as she recognized the last scrawled name. Jason. Was he a victim or something worse? "Jake!" she cried one last time, but the echoes faded into the shadows, swallowed whole. It suddenly felt like she was not just searching for Jake. No, she was wading into the very heart of an enigma she could barely comprehend. A cold wind rushed behind her, whispering her name, and she turned swiftly, the pulse of dread hammering in her ears. Where there had been darkness, a flicker of movement caught her eye. That's when she saw them, figures with pale, ghostly faces peering through the cracks of the classroom. The fear settled back in, a stranglehold on her chest. What did they want? Were these faces merely remnants of sorrow, or were they here to warn her? Then, the door slammed shut behind her again, reverberating through the old wood. Heart racing, she turned back toward the classroom. And there, in the corner, she saw a small hand reach out from the shadows, the familiar voice of her son pleading in the dark. "Mom, help me!" Emily froze, the fear paralyzing. What lay between her and her son? The truth was waiting just out of reach. Would she have the strength to confront it? The hand lingered, small and trembling as shadows flickered around it. "Mom, help me," the voice scraped against her mind, a reminder of the urgency that wrapped around her. Emily stepped forward instinctively, but the figures, those ghostly faces, moved closer, their hollow eyes locking onto hers. The air felt icy, like the shiver that ran down her spine, sending ripples of dread spiraling through her. The classroom walls appeared to close in, suffocating her, a confining grip tightening around her chest. "Leave him alone," she shouted, her voice cracking, the command laced with desperation. She took another step, reaching for Jake's hand. The shadows danced, whispering her darkest fears, darting with a life of their own. Suddenly, the figures lunged, mouths opening wide in silent screams. Emily felt their chill wash over her skin. A horrified realization gripped her: they weren't just lost children. They were trapped souls, tethered to this forsaken place, and now, they were reaching for her son. "No!" she cried out, retreating, but her back hit the solid wooden desk behind her with a dull thud. Panic burst like a wildfire in her mind. She could not let herself be consumed by these spirits. They needed her to stay. She had to fight. "Jake!" she shouted again, scrambling to find the flicker of hope in the darkness. With every passing moment, she felt the walls pulse, the invitation to stay swirling through the room. She didn't just want to reach him, she had to. The air thickened around her, wrapping around her throat like a vice, but she pressed forward. "I'm here, buddy. Just hold on," she cried out, straining to connect with the familiar voice, the warmth of her son, but the darkness was relentless. It shifted, slinking closer, taking forms of little children, not unlike Jake, their once innocent features twisted in despair. As her heart raced, Emily felt an overwhelming urge to flee, yet she couldn't abandon her search. The hand in the shadows faltered, trembling and fading. "Mom!" The tone shifted, laced with a haunting echo. "Help me." Gathering all her courage, she stumbled toward the corner, her fingers reaching for the small hand that disappeared as soon as it brushed her skin. A jolt of agony pulsed through her, a surge of loss, a flicker of understanding. Jake wasn't just trapped. The children in this place, the very essence of anguish, had latched onto him too. The shadows thickened, swirling with palpable rage. "Free us," she heard the chorus lilt, their voices merging into one chilling plea. "Free you?" she repeated aloud, half to herself, half to the room, uncertainty knotting in her stomach. The realization struck her like the thunder outside. Was this place a prison, drawing in the lost to perpetuate the cycle? And was she now one of them, destined to roam within these walls? She pressed her palms against her ears, trying to block out the cacophony, the dreadful weight of despair washing over her. Clenching her fists, she searched the room one last time, the faces of the children turning into a wall of sorrow. It felt suffocating. In that moment, the door slammed open again, inviting her to the unknown outside. Was it freedom? Or another layer of the nightmare wrapping around her? "Mom, please." The voice cut through the fear, pulling her back in the direction of her son. "If I let you go, will it be the end?" she whispered, but the only response was a sorrowful silence. Just as she turned back for a final grasp at him, the air shifted, and the familiar laughter floated through the room again, echoing eerily. It spiraled around her, a chilling promise. The figures lurked close, breathing in her fear, lingering nearer than before, their hollow eyes pleading. "Free us." With dread coursing through her veins, Emily felt time unravel around her. The choice loomed heavy: enter the swirl of torment, or flee into the unknown and perhaps leave Jake behind. Chaos erupted as the grasp of unseen forces threatened to pull her away. She flailed, her heart hammering against her ribcage. "Jake!" she screamed again as the shadows surged, ready to yank her into the dark abyss that waited beyond what awaited her in that uncharted territory. Would she ever find her son, or merely join the lost? The truth was deep within, lurking just in reach, waiting for her to grasp it. Would courage drive her forward, or would fear keep her caged in despair? Emily's world twisted into a cyclone of panic, her body thrumming with fear as the darkness reached for her. Dread clawed at her insides while she fought against the icy grip that wrapped around her, squeezing tighter, threatening to drown her in despair. "Jake!" Her voice broke like glass, splintering under the weight of the shadows. The hallway stretched out before her, a gaping maw of emptiness. She stumbled backward, but the spirits lunged, coiling around her legs, their spectral fingers brushing against her skin, cold as grave dirt. "Free us!" the murmur echoed, their voices hauntingly familiar, like twisted lullabies warped into despair. The plea crashed against her ears, suffocating, drowning the flickers of hope she clung to like driftwood in a storm. Terror streaked through her veins. She was not just fighting for Jake. No, the fate that loomed like a thunderhead was for her too, a fate she refused to accept. She swatted at the air, desperate to create distance between herself and the pulsating darkness, but they knew her by name now. The shadows writhed and twisted, a tapestry of torment that wanted to ensnare her. "Mom, don't leave me." The voice, a familiar lilt filled with pleading innocence, seemed to echo off the walls of her mind. "Hold on, I'm coming." The breath came in ragged gasps. She couldn't give up, couldn't surrender to the chilling embrace of these spirits that weighed upon her shoulders like 1,000 anchors. All around her, the shadows danced, flailing in a grotesque mockery of life, and the walls drew closer, closing in as if the very building sought to swallow her whole. One heartbeat. 2. She fled toward where Jake's voice beckoned, tearing through the dark, clutching at fleeting visions of children, a flash of laughter, a burst of warmth, all swallowed in the wailing tide of voices. Emily, her name twisted through the ether, an ancient chant seducing her, making the journey to her son feel impossibly long. The laughter morphed again, slicing through her heart like ice. It was no longer joy but a prelude to sorrow that echoed in dreadful waves. In desperation, Emily's fingertips grazed a tattered, stained sheet of paper clinging to the desk, a map, perhaps, or a clue to an escape. She seized it, its dampness slick against her palm, and opened it quickly. A riddle revealed itself, scrawled in a childlike hand: "Find the door to freedom, through the darkest night, where shadows crawl, and wrong feels right." "Whose voice is this?" she murmured, but the only response was the relentless chorus of the lost. With renewed resolve, she cast aside the paper, the realization striking her heart a door. Freedom lay at the end of the hallway beyond the oppressive shadow. But she could feel the pull of the darkness growing stronger, barbed tendrils of despair clawing at her. As she sprinted forward, the shadows shifted, coiling around her rapidly, like serpents, pulling her back. Her breath came in sharp, panicked gasps as she fought against the suffocating grip. "Jake! I won't leave you." In that moment, she felt the icy breath of despair wash over her, the icy exhale of those who hadn't escaped, the children who clung to the very essence of this horror. It was a reminder that time was running out. Then it hit her, the pulse of the air, the heavy thrum. The door, it had to be here. Salvation or doom, Emily needed to find it before the darkness engulfed her. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the swirling depths, illuminated by a shaft of light. It was a girl, eyes wide and luminous, reaching toward Emily with trembling hands. "Help me, it's here." The girl vanished before her eyes, swallowed into the void, leaving only lingering whispers trailing behind. But the urgent call echoed, now sounding more like a warning than a plea. Emily's heart thundered in her chest as she stumbled toward where the girl had stood. Could this be the way out, or simply another trap set by the lost souls pleading for release? Each step echoed in the emptiness, a countdown that thrummed louder. The darkness throbbed with its own heartbeat, hungry, ready to consume her whole. Would she find Jake beyond that door, or would she only encounter the horror waiting for her inside? The pulse quickened, and Emily felt the air shift, heavy with expectation. The darkness threatened to drown her again, but the girl's words rang in her mind. There was something deeper here, something she needed to uncover. Would she find the truth about the door in front of her, or simply join the legion of shadows yearning for escape? Emily pressed forward, desperation clawing at her throat. The hallway morphed around her, walls pulsing, flickering shadows distorted into something grotesque. There was no escaping the whispers. They swirled in her mind, taunting her. Find the door, they chanted, a dreadful lullaby that sank deeper into her consciousness. As Emily reached a corner, the flickering light illuminated a door, old and battered, its paint peeling like flakes of skin. Behind it, the distant echoes of children's laughter twisted into wails, gnawing at her sanity. She hesitated, her heart racing, a wild stallion in a storm. The door to freedom, she reminded herself, though her gut twisted with doubt. The riddle from the ghostly child rang in her ears. Freedom or doom? With a deep breath, she pushed against the weathered door. It creaked open, a sound like tortured wood protesting against the intrusion. A gust of cold air whipped around her, sweeping away the remnants of warmth and plunging her deeper into dread. Beyond the threshold lay a room engulfed in darkness, so thick it almost felt tangible. Shapes moved restlessly within, like shadows flitting at the edge of her vision. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears, she sensed the weight of unseen eyes, an expectant gaze boring into her soul. "Jake?" she called, her voice shaking. Silence. She took a step inside, the wooden floorboards groaning under her weight, each sound reverberating through the air like a countdown. The air pulsed around her, the darkness seeming to breathe, alive and hungry. Suddenly, a soft whimper echoed from a corner. Emily clutched her chest, forcing herself to stay calm, to believe. She rushed toward the sound, nearly stumbling as the shadows swirled around her, tugging at her clothes, wrapping around her ankles like tendrils trying to drag her down. "Is someone there?" she gasped. The whimper grew louder, morphing into a familiar call. "Mom, Jake." Relief surged through her, but fear followed close behind. Was this a trick of the darkness, a cruel mimicry? "Help me!" A small figure stepped into the dim light, too small to be anything but her son. But the boy's face was twisted, his features shifting like smoke, fading in and out. Emily reached out, hands trembling, desperation seeping into her bones. "Jake, please." His eyes were pools of liquid night, reflecting her fear back at her. "You have to let them go," he whispered, the shadows creeping closer, thickening as if they understood his words. "Let who go?" She felt confusion surge, fighting against the tightening grip of the darkness threatening to pull her under. "The ones who are trapped, we all are." His voice dulled, and Emily felt the fog of despair encroach again. "No!" she cried, feeling the shadows swelling, a tide of darkness that pressed against her, suffocating. "Help us, Emily!" The voices rose up, a chorus of pain and pleading that twisted in her head. "Set us free!" Just then, she saw the outlines of faces emerging within the blackness, distorted and anguished, all staring at her, children, adults, their eyes filled with a hopeful anguish. They were the ones the girl had warned her about. Emily's heart shattered. Each face she recognized, those who had vanished into the night, neighbors, friends, familiar laughter now silenced, echoing back to her in twisted pain. Emily, Jake's voice wailed, a cutting reminder wrapped in sorrow, and as if sensing her desperation, the shadows lunged forward, surging toward her like a rushing tide. Panic surged anew, tightening her throat. In that moment of dread, Emily knew she was teetering on the brink. Would she save them, or would she too become part of the shadows? With the darkness reaching for her, she spun around, breath hitching. The door she entered through began to flicker, light from the hallway dimming and fading. "Mom! Don't go!" Jake's voice screamed, frantically trying to grab her attention. In a panic, she searched for a way out, knowing the girl's words were the key. The truth she had to uncover lay hidden within the shadows. But was that truth worth the risk of losing everything? The darkness pulsed, waiting for her decision, a malevolent entity eager for her surrender. Would she free the souls trapped within or become one of them? Would she find a glimmer of hope or simply dive into the abyss alongside her son? The heavy silence pressed against her, a sinister weight threatening to crush her. And then, as her heart raced against the tempo of dread, Emily spotted a beam of light flickering to her left, cutting through the shadows like a knife. Freedom might just be found in the dark, she murmured, but was it a promise or a harbinger of doom? With the shadow's hungry whispers and the terrified cries of her son pulling her, she took a step toward the light, uncertainty gnawing at her heart. Would she make it back to Jake, or would the darkness take both of them forever? Emily stumbled forward, her heart pounding like a drum. The flickering light ahead felt both like a guiding beacon and a cruel reminder of what she could lose. Shadows writhed around her, desperate to reclaim their hold. "Jake!" she screamed, panic clawing at her throat. The softness of his name echoed, a fragile thread tying her to hope. But the faces around her grew louder, their pleas merging into an eerie cacophony that swirled through the room. "Help us, set us free." Without thinking, she darted toward the light, her feet pounding against the worn floor. Each step felt heavier as the shadows clawed at her, whispering secrets that chilled her bones. The faces lingered just beyond the edge of the light, beckoning her with outstretched hands, their mouths forming words that never reached her ears. "What do you want from me?" she cried into the oppressive darkness, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon her. "Let them go, let us go," the voices hissed, hearts breaking in unison, words laced with both pleading and accusation. She hesitated, a whirlpool of emotions battling within her. Could she really set them free? Wouldn't that mean losing Jake forever? Wasn't he worth fighting for? The light pulsed again, stronger now, almost tangible as Emily reached it. She could feel the warmth against her skin, a sharp contrast to the frigid darkness that crept closer. She flung her arm toward the glow, longing to escape, but a shadow lunged forward, wrapping around her wrist like iron shackles. "Don't leave us, Emily!" the faces cried, merging into a single distorted entity. They lunged toward her, a mass of agony that threatened to engulf her whole. "You can't abandon us!" Fear surged through her, and yet, behind that fear, a flicker of resolve ignited. She had to be strong. For Jake. "Let him go!" she shouted back at the gathering shadows. The entity hesitated, retreating slightly, as if her words struck a nerve. The shadows hissed, recoiling from the defiance in her voice. But the light flickered, momentarily dimming. It felt like a heartbeat, a warning. "Help us, he can join us," they whispered, seduction lacing through their despair. "No!" Emily's voice erupted, filled with fierce determination. "Jake needs to be with me." "You are wrong." The shadows writhed in anger, their whispers turning to a thunderous roar. "You can't. You don't understand. He belongs with us." Her heart sank. The truth of their nature sank in. These weren't just victims trapped and begging for freedom, they were something darker, something waiting to ensnare her beloved son. The air thickened with malice, a palpable tension swirling around her. "Mom! Help!" Jake's tiny voice broke through the chaos, snapping her focus back to him. The dark mass hesitated again, giving her a split-second window. She surged forward despite the grasp of shadows, letting instinct take over. "I want to let him go," she screamed as she lunged for him, reaching out into the void. Just as her fingers brushed against his small, cold hand, the shadows screamed, fury rising to a peak. With one final effort, Emily twisted, pulling Jake toward the flickering light that now pulsed like a heartbeat of hope. "Let us go, Jake!" she shouted, feeling the darkness clawing at her back. But in that moment, terror surged through her. Would the light accept them? Would it shield them from the wrath behind? Could they really escape the nightmare together? As they both tumbled into the light, the darkness exploded behind them. "Emily!" Jake's terrified scream echoed in her ears, drowning under the wrathful screeches of the shadows. Would they escape, or would those screams be their final tether to the living world? The light swallowed them whole, and all at once, everything faded to white. But then, an unsettling stillness fell, oppressive and suffocating. What lay on the other side? Did the darkness follow them? As they landed, Gasping, Emily felt a pulse of cold dread unfurl within her. She could only hope they hadn't fled from one horror into another. Jake? She croaked, glancing around as her pulse quickened again. The white room started to shift, walls closing in like a bad dream, pressing from all sides as she struggled to breathe. Mom? Where are we? Jake's voice, small and terrified, echoed in the tightening space. Realization struck cold against her spine. The shadows hadn't just followed them, they had brought their torment with them. And for every scream, Emily knew, a price would be paid. What had she unleashed? The walls pressed closer, the white now tinged with the shadows of doubt creeping into her vision. Emily could hardly breathe, the air thickening with a stifling dread. Stay close to me, Jake. We're going to be okay. Her voice quivered, betraying the fear clawing at her insides. Mom, I'm scared, Jake whimpered, his wide eyes darting around, searching for something, anything that felt safe. A chill surged through her. What if this was worse than before? A flash of doubt flickered within her mind. What if the darkness had indeed brought their nightmare with them? The shadows had called to her, but what did they mean? What price would they demand? She turned as she heard a soft whisper, threading through the oppressive silence. Emily, help us, join us. The voices twisted around her, caressing her consciousness like ice. The faces she once thought were simply lost souls now filled her with terror. Stop it! She shouted. Leave us alone. Her resolve was starting to crack. The walls surrounding her pulsed a slow heartbeat that almost synced with a thunderous rhythm in her chest. Mom! I don't want to stay here. Jake's voice wavered, panic flooding his tone. He clutched her hand, his grip like a lifeline, and she squeezed back tightly, relaying her strength to him. Then came a sudden sound, a deep scraping noise like nails on a chalkboard mixed with demonic laughter. It set off a shiver down her spine. Something was here, lurking just beyond her line of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. She forced herself to breathe, counting to 7. Stay with me, Jake. We're going to find a way out. We have to keep moving. Steadying herself, she took a quick look around. The white walls seemed to shimmer, promising an illusion of safety while betraying the suffocating atmosphere. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. It was almost as if the realm itself groaned in despair. Emily stumbled, clutching onto Jake as the floor shook violently, revealing cracks that oozed an inky blackness. They appeared like fissures in reality, threatening to swallow anything that wandered too close. Look! Jake pointed, his voice rising in a panicked pitch. In the wavering light, shadows danced across the walls, accompanied by the haunting voices, coaxing and pleading. She felt her heart hammering, fear was pooling in her stomach. What do you want from us? She shouted, desperation driving her words. Stay with us. You can't leave, you belong to the darkness now, they chorused, their hisses merging into a single haunting melody that edged closer to madness. Emily's skin crawled with unease. Was this really happening? A part of her wanted to succumb, to believe they could join those who were lost and be free of pain. But another part screamed in defiance. No. I refuse. We are not like you. The shadows shifted, their writhing forms pressing harder against the edges where the white walls met the void. And then, as if responding to her fierce proclamation, a low rumble echoed from the cracks. They widened, and from them emerged a shadow the size of a child, but taking on a menacing form, elongating and twisting as if drawn by malicious intent. Emily pulled Jake closer, shielding him with her body. We have to find a way to stop this. Jake, we have to. Before she could finish her thought, the shadow lunged, its swift movement slicing through space like a knife. Mom! Jake screamed as the world around them shrieked in terror, heart racing. Emily prepared for the worst. She couldn't let it take them. They were together. They had to be strong. But before she could act, the cruel eyes of the shadow locked onto her, and a chilling silence fell, breaking like glass, what awaited her in that moment of stillness? Was it her decision that would seal their fate, or would the darkness choose for her? The shadow hesitated, for just a fraction of a heartbeat, as if gauging her resolve. Emily felt time stretch in the silence that enveloped them. The oppressive atmosphere became thicker, her pulse thrumming loudly in her ears. With each second that flickered by, the cave-like room seemed to swallow the light, darkening their world further. "Run!" she finally screamed, her voice breaking the spell. Emily yanked Jake with her as they stumbled toward the nearest wall. She pressed against it, her palms sweaty against the cold surface, hoping for some solid escape that would not come. They needed to act before that shadow decided to devour them, but the reality of their situation clawed at her throat. The whispers had grown louder, more frantic, increasing in intensity until they were almost a roar. "Join us. Give in. You'll be free." The voices surged, crashing over her like an unseen wave, cold and unforgiving. "Mom, where do we go?" Jake's tiny voice trembled, and Emily looked at him, seeing his fear mirrored in her own eyes. The innocence in his gaze twisted her heart. She had to protect him. "We can't let them take us. Find the door, Jake." Her words came out sharper than she intended, desperation clawing through her throat. "We need to keep moving." She scanned the walls desperately, searching for any hint of a way out, anything that did not lead into that pit of darkness. They dodged to the right, then the left, navigating the writhing shadows. But every step felt like a betrayal of their bodies, dragging them deeper into the unknown. Emily felt a tug at her mind, a whisper begging her to look. How could she refuse? But the instant she did, everything became distorted, even reality itself twisted under that gaze, threatening to envelop her. "What's that?" Jake pointed, his finger trembling. A faint glimmer caught her eye, a doorway, shimmering in the distance as if beckoning to them, the edges glowing a soft but inviting white. "Jake, hold on!" she shouted, charging towards it, but the shadows seemed to protest, pulling her back, whispering deceitful promises. Just a moment's temptation, a sliver of doubt, that's all they needed. As they approached, the ground quaked beneath their feet. The walls pulsed in rhythm with the chaotic whispers, "Join us. Stay with us." They were closing in like a noose, tightening with every anguished breath Emily took. "Mom! Hurry!" Jake cried out again as they stumbled closer to the door. The shadow lunged, a dark form fuzzing at the edges of her vision, blocking their path. Emily felt its cold presence grappling for her mind, wrapping restrictions around her thoughts. With fierce determination, she tore her gaze away from the shadow, pushing every ounce of strength into her limbs. "Keep running, baby," she urged, voice cracking with a fierce resolve born from pure survival instinct. With fear propelling them forward, they broke through the threshold of the door just in time, the shadow's grip clawing futilely at where they once stood. Emily gasped as she felt a rush of fresh air fill her lungs, but it was betrayed by the sickening chill that seeped through her skin. They stumbled into a vast open space, a dimly lit corridor, but the light was twisted, flickering like a dying flame. "What now?" Jake panted, looking around wide-eyed in disbelief. The whispers still echoed here, and it felt like the walls held their breath, waiting for them to make a move, but as they stood there, the corridor seemed to shift, morphing before their eyes into scenes from a darker realm, the faces of the lost souls materializing on either side, trapped in a cacophony of anguish. They reached out with clawed fingers, desperate and pleading. Emily felt the pull again, screams of release melding with laughter throughout the corridor. They wanted her to stay. "No. I want tea," she yelled, but the shadows began to curl and twist toward her, hungry and relentless. Jake clutched her hand tighter, a tether in this swirling storm of despair. Then, in a swift motion, the ground beneath them began to tremble once more. The corridor began to pulse. In time with the shadows closing in. Metallic shrieks echoed around them, warning of impending doom. "What is happening?" Jake cried, his voice barely a whisper amid chaos. Emily's heart raced. She had to find a way to break free from this nightmare, a way to escape the dawning dread that loomed over them, a terrifying realization sinking in: what if they were too late? As the shadows grasped at their feet, pulling them slowly into the ground, Emily knew they had to make one final choice. Would they give in to the darkness, or fight until there was nothing left? In that moment, she could only grasp at the fraying thread of hope, praying it led them to safety, or to their end. The flickering light ahead seemed to pulse in answer, teasing the possibility of escape, or something so much worse. Would they find salvation or become yet another echo in the void? The shadows lunged at Emily like a hungry beast, tearing at the fabric of her mind, and in that instant, she felt the world twist and curve. The floor beneath her felt slick, a viscous pool of despair that tried to pull her down. She gasped, her breath catching as she gripped Jake's hand tighter, desperation fueling her resolve. "Don't look back!" she shouted, forcing her eyes forward despite the siren call of the whispers echoing in her ears. "Stay. Join us." Each word dripped with a venomous sweetness that made her stomach churn. The light ahead flickered, pulsing as if it were alive, challenging the darkness that encroached upon them. "We can't let them take us, Jake," she cried, practically dragging him along as they fought against the darkness closing in. They pressed on through the corridor, the walls tightening around them, as if the very structure of this twisted place conspired to keep them there forever. Suddenly, the corridor shifted again. One moment, it stretched endlessly into the unknown, the next, it collapsed, constricting them like a vice. Emily's heart raced. Panic filled every corner of her mind, drowning her in fear. "Jake, keep moving," she urged. But even in their flight, the shadows pursued them, hungry tendrils reaching out with an insatiable thirst. Jake stumbled, catching himself before he fell. "Mom, I can't. I can't." His voice broke, and despair washed over Emily faster than the darkness creeping at their heels. "Just a little more," Emily shouted, her own voice becoming desperate, raw. The flickering light ahead became brighter now, almost blinding, a lighthouse in an ocean of torment, and then it happened. Jake's little hand, now slick with sweat and terror, slipped through her grasp. "No! Jake!" she screamed, but in the chaos, it felt like time slowed. She turned, reaching for him, but he was already swallowed by a patch of blackness, his cries fading into the cacophony of anguished whispers. "Join us," they called. Emily heard them, felt their icy breath on her skin, begging for her to give in, to let go. "Stay with us." The sound intertwined with her own screams, creating a haunting symphony that echoed in the recesses of her mind. "No! You're not taking him." The clarity grew within her, igniting something fierce. She darted forward, pushing past the shadows gripping at her ankles like creatures of the night. The flickering light pulsed before her, drawing her closer, sparking a flicker of hope. With a surge of adrenaline, Emily lunged toward the brightness, reaching for it with everything she had. The shadows shrieked, shrill and furious as they fought to keep her tethered. "Mom!" She heard Jake's voice faintly, a beacon in the dark, and she dug deep, forcing her legs to move, feeling the sharp edges of fear cut through her mind. She felt it then. The floor shook violently as the shadows roared in protest, and the walls began to warp, twisting under the impact of her resolve. "Stay away!" she yelled as darkness clawed around her, desperate to pull her back. With one final push, she dove into the light. The world exploded in color and sound, a blinding white that threatened to consume her entirely. For a split second, she thought of nothing but the pure brightness. "Jake!" She landed hard, tumbling onto the ground, gasping for breath. The air felt electric, charged with energy. Disoriented, Emily looked around, desperate, but the corridor was gone. Instead, she found herself in a new place, a wide-open field beneath a sky simmering with stars. Where are we?" Jake trembled beside her, his wide eyes reflecting fear and confusion. She opened her mouth to answer, but the sound caught in her throat. This place felt wrong, almost too peaceful. Ahead, in the distance, figures moved slowly, emerging from the shadows of the trees, faces obscured but unnervingly familiar. Emily's heart dropped. They were back, and they were waiting. Waiting for her to make a choice. As the first figure stepped closer, a chill swept through the air. Emily froze, fear threading its way through her veins. "What do you want?" she cried out. Into the unknown, knowing the answer would seal their fate, but the shadows lingered, their whispers now morphing into something darker. What had she just unleashed? Would she and Jake ever escape the grip of the night? The moment hung heavy in the air as they both stared into the gathering gloom, dread coiling tight in their throats. In the haunting silence of the field, the figures stepped closer, and Emily's heart raced. She felt Jake's hand tremble, a fragile anchor in the storm of fear that whipped around them. The starry sky above felt mockingly serene compared to the terror creeping in like fog. "Mom, what's happening?" Jake's voice quivered, and Emily instinctively tightened her grip around him, certainty hardening within her. She had fought too hard, lost too much. "Stay close," she whispered, forcing courage through trembling lips as she faced the advancing shadows. Each step from the figures twisted their faces into grotesque masks of sorrow, those who had vanished from Cedar Grove. Their familiar features now filled with longing and anguish. "Let him go, Emily," the figures chorused, their voices dripping with despair. "You can join us. You'll be safe here." "No!" she shouted, raising her fists, defiance pouring from her every word. "I want to let you take him." Emily took a step forward, fueled by love as the shadows lunged closer, their cold breath clawing at her resolve. Behind her, Jake whimpered softly, confusion knitting his brow. She focused on him, their bond a fierce flame against the threatening darkness. "Listen to me." Emily dropped to one knee, bringing her face level with his. "You are strong, Jake. We've made it this far. But we need to fight even harder now. These shadows are just memories, echoes of pain. But, they look like they need help," he whispered, uncertainty pouring from his innocent gaze. "And we can help them," she replied, forcing calm into her voice. "But we can't give in. We help by breaking their hold on us, by forging our own path." With determined purpose, Emily turned toward the figures. "You may look like them, but you are not them. You can be free, but you don't own us." The shadows recoiled, shimmering as if her words struck them deep. "Leave this place." The ground trembled again, a seething whisper of anger rising from the depths of despair and longing. "Jake, whatever happens, I love you," Emily shouted, her voice ringing strong against the merciless shadows. With each declaration, the world felt like it shifted. The figures drew back, wailing, betraying their true nature. "You are forever bound, forever tied to us." "No!" she roared fiercely, pushing through the rising tide of darkness, pulling Jake alongside her. "We are free." Together, they charged forward, the pulsing light that had guided Emily transformed, blazing into a radiant brilliance. Emily felt a surge of warmth envelop them, like a protective shield against the encroaching darkness. With one great burst of energy, she thrust her hands toward the phantom figures, channeling every ounce of love, fear, and hope she could muster. "You don't control us anymore. Jake and I choose to live." Light exploded around them, pushing back the darkness that grappled for control. The chilling whispers faded, replaced by the melodic sound of laughter that once filled Cedar Grove. And then silence followed, a heavy, profound stillness enveloping the field as the shadowy figures dissipated into shimmering motes of light. "Mom?" Jake's voice cut through the stillness, filled with awe. "We did it, Jake. We're free." Emily could hardly believe it. The weight that had hung heavy in the air lifted, leaving a shimmering glow of peace where the figures had once stood. Hand in hand, they turned back to the now peaceful landscape, an expansive field bathed in soft moonlight. Infinite possibilities stretched before them as an ethereal calm swept through the air. I'm here, buddy. And we are going home. With hearts racing with hope, hand in hand, they stepped beyond the remnants of fear and despair, walking toward a future filled with light. Cedar Grove would heal, and together, they would carry the memory of those who had been lost, not as chains, but as whispers of love that guided them forward. "Mom, do you think they're okay?" Jake asked. "I hope so, Jake," Emily replied with a gentle smile, glancing back at the now quiet trees. "I truly believe they are. We did this together." As they continued walking toward the horizon, something shifted in the air. A warm wind followed, whispering promises of brighter tomorrows. They had faced the shadows and made it out alive. In the embrace of dawn, they were free. "So now, before you go, we need to talk about something important. You need to subscribe now, don't wait another second, or you'll miss out on the next thrilling stories we have. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm, it's a huge help to get this story out to more folks who would love it. And flood the comments, I want to hear your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. Plus, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this story. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans like you know how vital your support is.